So when it comes to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, all we really have in terms of information about this game at this point is the reveal trailer, and the reveal trailer doesn't really give a whole lot of specific information. However, through careful examination, we are able to find some breadcrumbs throughout this trailer that could possibly be pointing us in the direction of what is going to happen within the story of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And what we are finding to this point is extremely interesting, which is why in this video I wanted to talk about everything we possibly know about the possible story of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Full disclosure, this is fully speculative because we have such little information to work with. However, the fact that we're having to speculate is what makes this so interesting, and there are some details that do seem like they are indeed likely to factor into the story itself, and that makes the whole prospect of the story and this discussion all the more interesting. So without further ado, let's get into it. Today's Pokemon Scarlet and Violet video is brought to you by today's wonderful sponsor, Upstart. Upstart is a personal loan provider that can help you get funds for that big project you've been wanting to start, that big purchase you've been looking to make, or even if you just want to pay off credit cards. Over 1 million people have used Upstart, and it's because paying them back is as simple as one fixed monthly payment with a clear payoff date. Upstart also utilizes factors like employment, and not just a credit score, to help you get the kind of loan that's going to work best for you. You can even check out what kind of loan you're able to get in just 5 minutes without impacting your credit score for loans between $1,000 to $50,000. And you can also get your funds as fast as 1 business day after accepting your loan offer. You can find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today when you go to upstart.com/hoops, or just simply click the link in the description below. Again, that's upstart.com/hoops, and don't forget to use that URL to let them know I sent you. It will be in the description below if you would like to check that out, and a big thank you to Upstart for supporting the channel and making videos like this possible. So when it comes to the potential story of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, there are 2 things that we know so far that stand out more than any other, and that would be oranges and grapes and a potential school dynamic. We have no idea what they actually entail at this point, but oranges and grapes seem to be very important to this game's story because they are displayed prominently within the reveal trailer of the game, both as actual fruits and in particular as emblems, which seem to be the emblems of schools, which we'll get into a little bit later when we talk about the school side of this. The colors of these fruits do roughly equate to the colors of each game, Scarlet and Violet, but other than that, why would fruit have anything to do whatsoever with the story of a Pokemon game, let alone play a central role? Well, that is where the whole school thing comes into play, because if we look at the player characters, they very much seem to be in a school uniform type of outfit, with their outfit differing a little bit depending on which version of the game you're playing. You have more of a scarlet colored outfit in Pokemon Scarlet, and a more violet colored one in Violet. We can also see in a screenshot that both the backpack as well as the outfit itself of the player character bears the emblem of one of these 2 fruits. So not only does that give even more significance to oranges and grapes within the story of this game, they have actual emblems that are dedicated to them, but it also ties into the concept of a potential school dynamic as well, because it seems like these emblems in particular are the emblems of 2 different types of schools. And this would make the difference in outfits between the two versions of the game not just an aesthetic thing, but something that could actually play a factor in the story. Because with these school-like outfits and the presence of an emblem that very well could be a school emblem that is also present on these outfits as well, it very much seems to be the case that you indeed, as the player character, are a part of some kind of school, and there are two schools in particular in the game, possibly depending on which version of the game you play, that center around the imagery of oranges and grapes. Why this could be the case, I absolutely have no idea whatsoever, but I do know from talking to people that actually live in Spain, like one of my editors, Lou Gray, that oranges and grapes are very common fruits within Spain itself, but it doesn't seem like there's any extra significance there that could point us in the direction of why these are so substantial in the possible story. I've heard people suggest that maybe it has something to do with the legendary Pokemon, which I personally don't think is the case, because I feel like the fact that these emblems in particular depicting actual oranges and grapes is more so just for the purpose of branding and imagery for these schools than it is to depict any kind of Pokemon, whether legendary or not. Whatever the case may be though, as I said, these two fruits seem to be very, very important in terms of the plot of Scarlet and Violet, because they are even used as a hint towards these games within Pokemon Sword and Shield, as some people have discovered that there is wallpaper within one of the hotels in these games that specifically depicts oranges and grapes, clearly as a nod to what was to come in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And if it can be used as a hint for this game, then it most certainly means that it is going to play a big role within the plot, and the whole game itself could possibly revolve around this whole idea of oranges and grapes and the schools that they represent. Since this seems like such a likely thing, it is going to be very, very interesting to see how this ultimately plays out, because we've never really had any kind of dynamic like this within a main series Pokemon game before. I think it has a lot of potential based on the way it seems to be shaking out, and I am really excited to learn more about what it actually entails. In addition to that though, there are also some other things that possibly relate to the story of Scarlet and Violet that we've been able to piece together as well. However, they're a lot more fuzzy comparatively. The next one I wanted to talk about are the mysterious gems that appear within the Japanese logos for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. As you can see, there are some gem-like objects that pretty much appear front and center within the Japanese logos that do not appear within the English ones. And if you've been following pre-release trends of new Pokemon games for any amount of time on YouTube, then you're probably aware of the trend that the Japanese logos tend to depict the central new feature of the game. We saw it with the Japanese logos for X and Y that showed off the Mega Evolution symbol. We saw it for the Japanese logos of Sun and Moon, which depicted the Z crystals, and we even saw it within the Japanese logos for Sword and Shield, as those logos contained the Galar League symbol, which obviously had to do with Dynamaxing and Gigantamaxing, since within the gyms is where you could use that feature. So it's pretty clear that these gems are going to be representative of some kind of new central mechanic for these games, and just like previous generations, that central mechanic is also going to play a significant role within these games' story as well. And that segues me right into my next point, because the next thing I wanted to talk about is this really interesting, obviously very important looking building. This building, which is obviously based on the Sagrada Familia that is located in Spain, was in a bunch of shots of the reveal trailer, and between that and its general appearance, it's obviously going to be a very important location. This location is also most assuredly going to factor into the story in some way as well. The question is, how? Well, in my opinion, it very much looks like a Pokemon League type of building, like maybe this is actually the Pokemon League itself. And what's also interesting that potentially contributes to this idea is that within the same town that this building is located in, we can see a plaza that sits at a lower portion of the city that contains a pattern-like design on the ground that features all of the various Pokemon types. Within my initial video on the subject, where I pointed out some key details about this initial trailer, I talked about how the fact that the types were specifically represented in this way and then shown off in the reveal trailer could possibly point toward an emphasis on battling, especially considering that this Pokemon League looking building is within the same city as this design. It seems like the city as a whole is also going to be important too, because it was literally the first thing we saw in terms of gameplay footage within the reveal trailer. So what exactly is going on with this city? Is this Sagrada Familia building actually the Pokemon League? Is this all supposed to be representative of some kind of battle focus, similar to what we saw in Pokemon Sword and Shield? In fact, the whole vibe of this city is kinda similar to what Winden was in Pokemon Sword and Shield, and that city obviously housed the Pokemon League as well, or at least the equivalent to it since that game didn't have a traditional Pokemon League. We're obviously just gonna have to wait and see on this one, but all of these different prospects are definitely interesting. The next point I am going to turn to are the names of the games themselves. Scarlet and Violet are interesting names because they obviously go back to colors, for the first time since Pokemon Black and White and Black and White 2. I also mentioned in that previous video that I talked about earlier that all of the main series Pokemon games that are named after colors, so Red, Blue, Yellow, Green, Gold, Silver, Black, White 2, are either the Generation 1 games themselves or have some kind of connection to the Gen 1 games, either directly or indirectly. Gold and Silver were obviously pseudo-sequels to the Gen 1 games that had you going back to the Kanto region, and Black and White 2 were a soft reboot of the franchise that took a lot of inspiration from the Gen 1 games too. So it's possible, given the naming scheme, that there could be some allusions or homages to the original Kanto games in Scarlet and Violet. But another really interesting thing with the names that could also factor into the story is something that a lot of people have been speculating about. There's been a lot of discussion online about whether the names Scarlet and Violet could potentially tie into the light spectrum, as in ultraviolet light and infrared light. This would be an interesting possibility, but there is a little bit of a snag with this idea that also brings about another interesting possibility at the same time, because when it comes to a theme of light, that is something we have already had in Gen 7, because you had the Light Trio as the three main legendaries of that generation, with Solgaleo, Lunala, and Necrozma, which was the light Pokemon itself. However, when it comes to the idea of ultraviolet light and infrared light, those are outside of the visible light spectrum, which is what the Gen 7 legendaries were dealing with. So this could kind of be like an opposite side of the coin type situation, where these games and their legendaries are dealing with a whole new facet of the concept of light compared to the Alola games. That could provide an opening for these games to deal with that subject matter, and obviously that is a very interesting direction to go if indeed that is the case, so it's definitely something we are going to want to keep our eyes on. And last but not least, the final possible story-related thing I wanted to talk about in this video is the concept of time travel. I know, whenever you bring up the concept of time travel, half the people you're talking to are bound to start rolling their eyes because it's such a stereotypical and kinda played out story mechanic, but it is a very interesting one, and there is some evidence to suggest that this could possibly play a factor in Scarlet and Violet. The most obvious of these points is the fact that within one of the screenshots for these games, Hisuian Zoroark can be seen being used in a battle by the player character, and obviously this Pokemon only ever existed within the distant past of the Hisui region. It was pretty evident that these Pokemon were going to be brought to the modern games in some way so that they could be used and could also be considered a part of the larger Pokédex as a whole, but with the whole concept of time that normally should separate this game from these types of Pokemon begs the question of whether time specifically is being used to bring them to the modern day, specifically through time travel. And within the live action section of this trailer that also displays some very important things with this game, like the oranges and grapes we talked about earlier, there is a sequence where when things start to get crazy right before we start to see the gameplay footage, a clock starts to become all wonky and starts to turn in every direction. With the apparent symbolism that seems to be going on with various aspects of this part of the trailer, could this potentially be a sign that time travel is going to be a thing in some way in this game? It kinda wouldn't really be the most far-fetched thing in the world, considering we are just barely coming off of a game that was set in the distant past. So as much of a reach as it might seem like at this point, I do think it's a possibility worth considering. And if it indeed actually played a factor, that obviously opens up a whole new world of possibilities for the story of these games. So that is pretty much everything we know about the possible story of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. What do you think about all these different points though? Does this sound like a story that you are going to be interested in? Let me know in the comments below, and if I missed any other details, be sure to let me know with a comment as well. If you enjoyed the video, you can also leave a like and subscribe if you're new for more Pokemon content, especially Scarlet and Violet content. This is going to be a great time to be a part of the channel, I'm just saying. With all of that being said though, I will be back with another video very, very soon, and until then, as always, thank you guys for watching this one, I love you very much, and I will smell you guys later.